In Geneva, Vladimir Putin faced his old nemesis,
President Biden and Vladimir Putin
now the President of the United States.
For neither of them is this their first rodeo.
The tensions seem to be a bit high.
Putin is looking at Biden and saying, this is a weak American president. He doesn't have the overwhelming support of his public. His people are so divided. Just months earlier, they'd had an attack on the Capitol. And all he needs to do is hold Biden off long enough so that he can continue to assemble the plan that he's putting together.
They're children of the Cold War, and they see each other and their countries through the Cold War. Biden saw Putin for what he is, a KGB revanchist who wants to remake the Russian Empire.
I just remember the body language of them sitting in that room together, and it's icy. I mean, these are two people who do not like each other.
Antony Blinken, now Secretary of State, was once again in the room.
The tone of the conversation was professional, it was direct, but it was very clear where we had our differences. President Biden made very clear where we saw things differently, and so did President Putin.
Try to determine where we have mutual interests.
A top priority for Biden, deterring Putin in Ukraine.
President Biden made clear in the meeting to President Putin our commitment to Ukraine, our commitment to its sovereignty, to its independence, to its territorial integrity.
They wanted to park Putin, but he didn't want to be parked. He wanted to be the #1 problem of everybody in the whole world, but especially the #1 priority, the #1 threat, the #1 problem that the White House was dealing with.
Putin began laying the groundwork for the invasion of Ukraine.
And 100,000 Russian troops near Ukraine's border are fueling fears of a
Russian forces start moving back toward Ukraine's border.
Heavy military equipment clearly taking an aggressive posture this weekend.
Not just the eastern border, but no, all 3 borders.
Russian troops had been surrounding Ukraine for days now.
Ukraine border with Belarus, Ukraine border with Russia, Ukraine border with occupied Crimea.
Satellite images show an increase in Russian forces on the Ukraine border.
At the White House,
Tensions nearing a tipping point.
an emergency presidential briefing. Secret information about Putin's plans.
And it was in that moment when the combination of seeing the forces deployed and then having, from the information we'd gotten, real visibility on what Russia was actually thinking and what they were planning, that's when we really saw the storm rising and heading in Ukraine's direction.
Once again, an American president was facing a critical decision about how to deal with Putin.
If Russia is allowed to get away with this, if Russia stomps all over Ukraine and takes it over, it affects the entire international order that we've been living under since World War II. The stakes were pretty high, and they continue to be very high.
In a video conference with Putin, Biden warned him to pull back from the brink.
He's saying, first of all, we see what you're doing, what you're planning, what you're plotting, and if you go ahead with what we're seeing, you need to understand the costs and consequences to Russia will be severe, and you need to know that I mean what I say.
Putin's response was familiar: denial.
They're denying any imminent aggression against Ukraine. They're saying that that's not what we're doing. But because we had such extraordinary visibility and extraordinary information, we knew in real time when Putin was saying something that was in contradiction with what was actually happening.
Putin ignored Biden and pushed forward with the invasion.
Vladimir Putin understands the Western ability to make decisive steps pretty well. He knew that when President Biden said, don't do this, or, there will be consequences, he knew that there were not going to be any consequences.
For 2 decades, Vladimir Putin had defied American presidents, invading Georgia, seizing Crimea, interfering in a presidential election. And he wasn't stopping now.
He made a calculation that Biden would not be able to lead an international group of countries to support Ukraine, and that there wouldn't be the will to support Ukraine, and even if it was there in the beginning, it would not continue.
30 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, Vladimir Putin was now pursuing an all-out war to rebuild the Russian Empire.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Apocalyptic scenes on the outskirts of the capital city.
A non-stop onslaught over the last 24 hours with mass casualties.
Tens of thousands of civilians trapped in cities under near constant Russian shell fire.
Putin wants Ukraine. He wants this pan-Slavic superstate with Moscow as the capital. He wants Ukraine. He doesn't think it's a real country. I don't know how you compromise with somebody who just wants Ukraine. That's not something you could build a bridge across.
Ukraine is calling this a full-scale invasion.
Biggest war in Europe since World War II.
The world is waiting to see just how far Putin's 190,000 troops will go into the country of Ukraine. Will he stop?
With the battle for Ukraine underway, Biden went further than any president before, delivering weapons and intelligence to the front lines to help fight Putin.
The United States has opted in to the fight. The amount and scale of the military support for Ukraine's defense of itself against Russian aggression is enormous. It's staggering, clearly something that Vladimir Putin did not expect.